How's it going, everyone? It's K Limited here, and today we are going to be talking about Quick Step on the Atari 2600. Now, this game is something that I just happened to come across when I was doing a trade-in. I saw it, it had the box, it was complete in box, and it was cheaper than what it usually goes for, so I went ahead and I used some trade credit to get it. And I wouldn't have gotten it otherwise because this is actually a pretty rare Atari game. This is the second rarest Atari game in my collection. So if I didn't use in-store credit, I would not have gotten this game. If you can find this game and maybe it just, they priced it wrong. They just threw it on the shelf and they priced it wrong and you're able to get it for a really good deal, definitely pick this game up. But picking up this game using trade credit is a great way to pick it up. Maybe you can find a lot and it just happens to be in the lot. Keep an eye out for this game because I will say this is actually a decent little Atari 2600 game. I really like the idea behind it. So you have two characters on the screen. You have a kangaroo, which is who you're controlling, and then you have a squirrel that you're competing against. And the whole objective of this game is to jump on these little ledges, and you're jumping on these little ledges, and you're turning them to your color. The game can get pretty chaotic as well because they do encourage you to try to screw each other over, right? So if you have two players going at each other, you're going to be trying to eliminate the other player. There's many different ways to eliminate the other player. The whole way that you eliminate characters is by basically having them fall off the screen. So they can scroll, the screen's constantly scrolling. So if a character is at the bottom of the screen when it's still scrolling and they scroll off the screen, they lose a life. So there's plenty of ways to eliminate someone, and they give you some tools to do that. And they actually have some really fun and chaotic ways of doing that. There's these little white blocks. They're white blocks, but they're brighter than the other blocks on the screen. And if you hit that, your character will start flashing different colors. Usually if you're the kangaroo, you're just like orange. But whenever you hit these blocks, your character will start flashing on the screen. And if you are able to chase down the other character and jump on whatever little platform they're on, they will actually be frozen to that platform for a few seconds. So if you can do that and they're low enough towards the screen, if they're towards the bottom of the screen and it's still scrolling, then they can get eliminated that way because you basically froze them and they were stuck. So they just scrolled right down off the screen and lost a life. So that's one way you can actually eliminate your opponent. And you have 5 lives, by the way, as you're playing through this as well. But you can make them lose life doing that. You can also make them lose life because you have this little feature in this game where if you press the fire button on the controller, if you have these abilities, you can get these little abilities by stepping on these orange blocks. If you have those, you can save them up and you can store them, and it actually gives you some even from the beginning of the game. They're apparently called tricky traps, and you are basically able to jump up. You can turn a platform to that color, and then you jump up again, and it will basically, and if you press the fire button, it will basically make that block disappear. So you can make blocks disappear and they won't be able to get up to the next layer and they'll just be forced to scroll right down to the bottom of the screen and lose a life. So that's another great thing to use. And it's really helpful whenever there's sections that speed up really quick, and whenever those sections happen, there's only one row of platforms. So usually you have a screen full of platforms that you're jumping around. But whenever it starts speeding up and you hear it give that like little alarm sound, there's just one section of platforms, and that is the perfect time to start using those tricky traps because you can make the platforms disappear from underneath you and trap the other player. So really like that. I think that the way that this game works is like, yeah, it's simplistic, but they really capitalized on just making this a really fun competitive game. And basically the game ends once you're out of lives. It really depends on who loses the lives first. Basically, as soon as one player loses all their lives, it's game over. So if the squirrel loses all his lives, then you still have like 4 lives left, for example. Those lives that you have left over will actually go towards your total score. It will give you like bonus points for still having lives left. So that's actually a great strategy to win this game because, yeah, you get points for jumping on the ledges and stuff, but you get even more points if you are able to stay alive and save your extra lives, because all those extra lives are going to go towards your points total at the end of the game. So again, I really like this feature. It's a really addictive game too, and I will say eventually once you start doing it enough, it does get kind of easy, but I still enjoy it. I still think that this is actually a really fun Atari game. And overall, in terms of its sound design, I think its sound design is great. Its controls are fantastic, super, super well done. I love the controls on this game. Never have any issues with those. I think the graphics actually look really nice as well. It's kind of funny to me because whenever you look at like the overview of this game and you look at like the reception of this game, apparently people used to complain about the graphics of this game. Like I don't know what type of guy was sitting around and judging the graphics on this Atari game and saying, "Oh, this Atari game doesn't look as good as the other Atari games." Like I don't. I'm sorry, but this game just looks like an Atari game. It doesn't look worse or better than any Atari game. It just looks like an Atari game. So, I don't know. People apparently say that it doesn't have as much charm as Qbert. And look, I like Qbert. I think Qbert is a cute game. But Qbert on the Atari 2600 doesn't look as good as this. I'm just going to be real. But that being said, it's an Atari game. Who cares about the graphics that much, But either way, all that matters is if this game is fun, and it is. It is very fun, and it is bright and colorful, and I think that is what is really the best thing you can do when it comes to Atari game is just make a game that's bright and colorful, take advantage of those colors on the Atari, and just try to make the sprites as cute as possible. And I think they did a good job making this little kangaroo and squirrel character. I think they did a good job with that. And overall, I think that this is a fantastic video game that if you happen to find cheap enough, it's definitely worth picking up. As I said, this is unfortunately an expensive game. One of the reasons why it is so expensive is because the company Imagic, this was one of the last games that they actually made for the Atari. So the lowest pricing at the time of making this video is about $45. So it is a pretty expensive game. That's why I kind of urge you to, look around, try to find it in some lots or something. Try to find someone who maybe just doesn't know what it is. You find it in a game store. Some game stores just throw all the Atari games in one section and just have them for one price. If you can find a store like that, that'd be hopefully a good place to find it. Yeah, it is a rare Atari game, and it is a really good Atari game, but try to find it in a way that you don't have to pay that much for, I kind of got lucky when I found it with the box, complete in box and everything, I just used in-store credit for it, but if you're not using in-store credit or you're not finding it cheap and you actually have to pay retail for it, it's pretty pricey, so keep an eye out for it at like flea markets and stuff. Maybe you can get lucky, but I do think it's a fun game. I'm not going to say that it's worth paying the full retail price, but maybe if you have some games you're not playing and you want to trade them in towards something like this, that's what I did, and I'm pretty happy with what I did. So I'll leave it there. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, hit the like button, subscribe button down below. I'll talk to you guys in the next one. You have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.